Back to the Opposites Abroad podcast, a podcast covering all things travel. Charlie Bosco here in BC, and we've got two guests joining from Denver. We're just trying to figure out why you guys aren't sitting in the same studio, but you're in the same city. We've got TT as ever, and we're joined by bluegrass musician, and as I described you on the last podcast, our first rock star, Martin Gilmore.
I don't know about rock star.
I mean,
but, yeah.
If I got paid to play music, I would say I was a rock star.
Yeah, it's nice to get paid. Sometimes I wish I'd pay more, but I always say you can do whatever you want in life as long as you're willing to be poor.
That's very true. Yeah, at each end of the economic spectrum is the leisure class.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but are you a full-time musician?
Yeah, full time. I teach music as well, and that's kind of half and half. But it's all music all the time here, bluegrass and folk music. And I'm a songwriter and record producer and whatever I can do within the music world to pay the bills. You can find me at martingilmore.com. I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. I'm any place you get your music. I have a new record out. You can go to martingilmore.bandcamp.com. And probably of interest to you all is I have a record there on Bandcamp that I recorded in Egypt with an oud player called East West, and it was pretty cool. So that might be, maybe you should use one of those songs for your theme song.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's good. Yeah.
And you know what? It's not a genre I listen to a lot, but I looked up your music. It's great. It's before we recorded the podcast. I really enjoyed it, and as a very amateur drummer, I have a vague interest in music, and yeah, it was cool. I think it's a great career.
What's oud?
Yeah, an oud. It's like a predecessor to the guitar. It's actually a predecessor to the lute. It's kind of like a bullback mandolin. If you've ever seen those, they call them taterbug mandolins in bluegrass. But it's got a big bowl back and strings on the front. And it was the Muslims or the Middle East, the Arabs, brought it across North Africa and into Spain, and then it became the lute. And lute and oud are the same word essentially. The lute had frets. They would tie strings around the fingerboard so they could fret it. The oud is fretless, and then the lute became the guitar and the mandolin. That's kind of the predecessor. So there's a connection between those two instruments. You would recognize it if you heard it. It's kind of the sound of the Middle East, like it's their primary instrument.
Well, that was a great segue. You should go into broadcasting because I would love to talk. I'd love to talk about touring. We actually have a touring musician joining us on our next podcast, but I would love to do it. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. But we actually got you on for this one. We'd like to get you on a second time, but we got you on this one to talk about Egypt. Which is a country you know well, and I guess not that many people do know it that well in North America. How did you? Why Egypt? How did that story start?
Well, my wife is a teacher, and she always wanted to teach internationally. And as I say, I can be unemployed anywhere, so I went along with her. And I was kind of like at a point I was playing with a bluegrass band, and the banjo player in our band plays with another more famous band than ours, and they were going on the road and touring. And we had been playing pretty regular for 10 years, and that's kind of a good span for bands. Like usually you need a break around that time. So it was just kind of serendipitous. And so we packed our bags, rented our house out, and traveled to Egypt. And she taught at a school in Egypt called the Modern English School. And I taught guitar lessons there a couple days a week. And then I was kind of a travel agent for for the rest of the time. I would plan our trips because we traveled a lot from Egypt. And a lot of people came to visit us when we were there, including TT. He came. And it was great. I got to know the country really well, and it was really nice to have one person who was there working and one person who was like trying to solve all the problems, because it's hard to live overseas, and it's probably harder to live in a place like Egypt than maybe Ireland or England. But having lived in different countries, I think that's something people underestimate. You think, how do I make the healthcare work? How do I make the education system work? Where do I find a dentist? What do I do if my car breaks down? Like there's more logistical issues. Take up all your time. Yeah. trying to puzzle solve. And we had good help at the school. Like, it was nice to be there because the school was really well connected. A lot of people, of course, had lived there for a long time, but the school would also take care of you. Like, they if you had a medical emergency, they would get it solved for you, and which is hard. I mean, all that stuff. It really makes you appreciate America a lot more living in a place like that, because like the healthcare system is okay up to a point, but like if you have an emergency, like the traffic doesn't move out of the way for the ambulances. The ambulances are just stuck in traffic and nobody gets out of the way for it, and it's like, boy, hope that doesn't happen.
You were in Cairo? Forgive my ignorance on where the school is.
Yeah, we lived in a section of Cairo called Mahdi, which is not a really touristy area, but it's very nice. It's south of downtown along the river. And there's a lot of embassies around there, a lot of expats. It's kind of an expat place, but there's not a lot of like historic sites or stuff to see in that area. It was kind of laid out by the British in the 1800s, and so it's kind of pretty colonial, but lots of trees and green, and in terms of other places in Cairo, it's pretty nice. And then the school was clear out in New Cairo, which is out east of the city, kind of out past the airport. So it was about a 45-minute bus ride every morning and evening to get there and back. On the Ring Road, which in Cairo, the Ring Road is infamous. It's crazy. I could do a whole podcast about stuff I saw on the Ring Road.
Why the Ring Road in particular?
Well, it's just like the traffic in Egypt is like India or places like that, where it's just crazy. And it's so crowded. I mean, Cairo's an enormous city. It's 25 million people when you pair it together with Giza, which is right there across the river. And so the traffic is endless. It's kind of, everything kind of flows as one. And the Ring Road, they have the lanes painted, but they don't mean anything to anybody driving. And it's just a crazy mix of like horse carts and camels and Ferraris and Toyota Hiluxes and Peugeot 504s. It's crazy, and they'll have a car accident and there's no emergency response really, so everybody's just driving around it, and there's sort of an ethos in the Middle East and across North Africa, which maybe you've heard before, that's inshallah, which is like God's will. And that kind of, they say it when it's like, well, God willing, we'll see each other. Inshallah, we'll see each other again. Or inshallah, whatever happens, happens. So like a safety is not always of a concern, because it's the inshallah. If it's my day to go, it's my day to go. I'll do this crazy stuff. I'll give you one, for instance. One time we were driving down the Ring Road, and there was a Toyota pickup truck with trash in the back of it, piled up probably like 10 or 15 feet high, driving down the highway at 50 miles an hour or whatever, and there was a guy sitting on top of the trash on driving down the highway. Like, it's crazy. And he didn't fall off, but I just like it's crazy to see that stuff is endless over there. But the Ring Road is, I think anybody who's been to Cairo will know about the trauma of the Ring Road. We were in one accident on the Ring Road. We got clipped by another bus. Fortunately, nobody got hurt, and we were able to keep going. And then we got rear-ended once on a kind of a side road. So I've been in 4 car accidents in my life, and 2 of them were in Cairo.
Well, and it's not a walkable city either.
No, yeah, it's not really. I mean, the sidewalks are bad if there are sidewalks. It's dangerous because the cars aren't really looking out for you all the time.
Yeah, it's like playing Frogger when you're
it really is.
running across.
They're kind of halfway looking out for you. It's kind of like the thing in Rome where if you just start walking, they'll sort of dodge you. But you've got to have a lot of faith that they're looking.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That stuff got really hard. There were days when I was like, I don't want to leave my house because it's just so hard to like even get down the street. And there's any number of other hazards. The sidewalks aren't good, so you could trip and fall.
Yeah.
There's electrical stuff that's not safe. So you kind of have to get to know your way around. But in general, like, you can also kind of just go along with the people and wander out in the street. And if there's a car coming up behind you, they'll beep at you and you get out of the way. And so, like, as an American, that's a real hard adjustment of, like, you're kind of conditioned to follow these rules that keep everybody safe. But over there, you don't necessarily have to follow those rules. You just accept the same level of risk as everyone else, which is not nothing. So
yeah, and the chaos of Cairo. When people ask you, like, should I go to Egypt or I'm thinking about going, I always say, unless you're a pretty seasoned traveler or you're going with a company that's going to kind of take care of everything and hold your hand through the whole thing, it's really not a great place for people to go on their own.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's true. My mom had never traveled internationally, and she came to visit. And Egypt is a very intense first trip. I mean, as soon as you step out of the airport, it's a whole other thing, like a whole other thing from travelers, because you have like the combination of the Egyptians are there with their galabayas. The men wear these kind of long desert dresses, robes, and the women, a lot of them wear hijabs. So if you're not used to that, there's kind of a culture shock element as soon as you come out. But also you get blasted by the desert heat, which we arrived in August and it's hot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Cairo's never under 90. Never under 90 in the summer, maybe never under 95. It doesn't get like the scorching hot of like southern Egypt, but so you have that. It's dirty, and the thing that I found really shocking when I first arrived, which I didn't think about, was like, as an American, especially like coming of age in 2002, I graduated from high school, and just how many like movies and TV shows we had seen about the Middle East and how they're the bad guys, right? And it looks like those places. It looks like Baghdad. And I remember driving down the road the first time in the bus on our way to our house, and just like feeling like I was in Black Hawk Down. I mean, it's safe though. It's safe.
Yeah. It's
Egypt. You're not going to get attacked by militants or anything, but you might get hit by a bus or something. The traffic is crazy, and like, there'll be a hole in the street and they'll just put rocks around the hole, so there's no like notification, so you got to hope your driver's good, and they are.
Yeah.
But that was a real culture shock of like, boy, I've really been conditioned by these films that I've seen, and I consider myself a smart person, somebody who was like very open-minded. I was really surprised at how much that affected me. But I got, after a few weeks, I got used to it. I didn't feel on edge anymore.
Well, I remember when I landed, I've never been so happy to have a beer in my life as when you land. It's utter chaos. It's like a blast furnace when you walk out, trying to find the driver, which was stressful. Driving is super stressful. It seems very just a crazy place. And then getting to your house, and you handed me a beer when I walked in, and it was cold, and it was like, that was one of the most enjoyable moments I've ever had for a beer in my entire life.
Yeah. We learned that. We like to have beers on hand. The beer in Egypt is all made there. It's not like amazing beer. It's all Heineken, basically. It's fine. But you could order it like through an app, and they would just deliver it to your house, and then you could keep it cold. And they had like reusable bottles, so you drink the beer and you put it back in the basket. They come pick them up, and they go wash them and repackage the bottles and ship them back to you again another time. Yeah, it was cool. Did we walk? I can't remember. Did we walk down to Drinkies? Drinkies was the liquor store.
Yeah, we did, because it's not super easy to get alcohol there.
Yeah, it's really restricted, and all the Egypt is just kind of culturally sort of xenophobic's maybe not the right word, but they're very Egyptians love Egyptians, and they're very insular, like and they kind of consider themselves Arabs, but I'm not sure I necessarily believe that they're Arabs in the same way as like the tribal Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula. Like, the Egyptians are a really cohesive group of people that live along the Nile, and so like all the stuff that they sell almost in Egypt is made in Egypt. I think there are laws that they have to do that. It's just kind of a really protected society. So they'll have like the banks will all be like HSBC or Wells Fargo or something, but they're actually centered in Egypt. Like, they're not really associated with the outside banks in the same way, so it's hard to do international banking, and so all the drinky stuff, all the liquor they sell there and beer they sell there is made in Egypt, which is fine for the beer. The wine isn't that good, but like when we arrived, they cautioned us against drinking the hard alcohol. They're like, you might go blind.
It could be ethanol.
I mean, I'm a bluegrass musician. I've drank plenty of moonshine, and so far I'm still good.
That's it. I mean, the economy sounds like Trump's wet dream. Everything gets made there. They don't trade with anyone. They don't want to know about anyone else. That's
Yeah, I mean they do trading. Like they have a lot of agricultural stuff that they export, and their imports they don't have that much because it's really insular, and their economy just isn't very good, right? But yeah, it's funny, like all this stuff going on. I see a lot of Egypt in it, and I'm like, I don't know if I think that's such a great idea. I experienced that in Egypt. It's really surprising to me. I feel like everybody should go there.
well, especially Trump.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I got so many questions, but I suppose the first one is, why is Egypt a mess? Because for the comparison I would have, I spent a lot of time in Morocco, and so I really understood what you meant about we're conditioned to find that openly Islamic society quite threatening. The call to prayer when you're in the mountains can feel threatening because of we associate it with bad outcomes because of Black Hawk Down and Lone Survivor. But so I totally get that. But why is Egypt kind of a mess? Is it corrupt? Is it just been badly run? Has it been a dictatorship? What's led to it essentially not being a particularly well-functioning country?
Yes to all of that. I mean, it is really corrupt. It's a corrupt place in terms of its government, not in terms of its people necessarily, but in terms of its government and the way that it's run. I mean, a lot of the major infrastructure stuff, I think, if I remember right, is run by kind of a military cartel essentially. Like I think like the construction companies there seem to be independent, but I think are actually overseen by the military. I could be wrong on that, but there is a lot of corruption. It has been a dictatorship for a long time. After the revolution in the 50s, and Nasser took over and became the dictator of Egypt, and it was Nasser, and then Sadat, and then Mubarak, and then we had Mohammed Morsi, who was part of the Muslim Brotherhood after the Arab Spring, and now we have Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. So that's not that many leaders in 70 years or however much it's been.
And Nasser, quickly, Nasser is an interesting guy because he brought down a British Prime Minister, Anthony Eden, over the Suez Canal. So he's a guy I've enjoyed reading about.
I think they're all pretty interesting guys, and to be maybe to be generous to them as well. I think, Egypt had been a really colonial place since since Alexander the Great. I mean Alexander and the Ptolemies took over and ran Egypt, and then the Romans came, and then the Ottomans came, and so I don't know. I think Egypt always has had this identity, but when they became self-ruling again, I'm not sure that they necessarily have the memory of how to run all that, and a lot of the dictators, I think, were. They were, leftists or inspired by leftists, and which has its advantages and disadvantages in a lot of ways. So I like to say that they're doing the best they can, but I that's maybe not necessarily true. There's a lot of Egyptians who would like to see something different, I'm sure. And I know of a few Egyptians at least who would like to see something different. I'm not sure if that's the majority of Egyptians, because the Egyptians that I had close proximity with were maybe smarter than your average bear, and more educated than your average bear, just because of where I lived and who I was associating with and stuff. But honestly, I don't know that a lot of everyday Egyptians really think that much about that stuff. I don't think that their education system is very good to talk about those kind of complex things. I mean, I had friends in Egypt who can't really read a map, don't really know where they are in the world, don't really know how the world is laid out, or what their relationship is with other countries. I don't think they have a visual idea of what the world looks like or how it runs. So, I mean, without that kind of knowledge of geography, it's really hard to understand the other complexities of the world, I feel.
And what rights do women have there compared to other parts of the Middle East?
Boy, Egypt, in terms of, if we're comparing it to other parts of the Middle East, it's actually pretty good. it's hard to say. I went to Lebanon. I'm not really sure all about all of the rights and stuff in Lebanon, but Lebanon's probably one of the more liberal countries in the Middle East, if not the most liberal country in the Middle East. But there are women, I think, in the parliament in Egypt. I think there are women on the Supreme Court, if I remember. I can't. All this knowledge now is 10 years old, and I haven't kept up with it. But they're definitely like probably culturally considered like maybe a second tier, definitely subservient to men what's the word I'm looking for? Patriarchal society, I suppose. When I would go out to dinner with my wife, like, the waiters would never look at her. She would, if she tried to, she would order, but I think they generally expected me to order. They would bring me the check. If she was in a cab trying to get somewhere and she knew the way and she told the cab driver where to go, a lot of times the cab driver wouldn't listen to her, that kind of stuff. So I think that if we're talking about like rights and what women can do, I think they're pretty good on paper. But the reality is, I think there's probably some bigotry against women. And I mean, that's one of the big problems in Egypt too. No, I shouldn't say I think there's bigotry. There is. Like, a sexual assault is a big deal in Egypt. It's probably pretty common for women to get groped. In fact, they have like women-only train cars on the metro. There's a lot of catcalling and crude comments towards women, which if you don't speak Arabic, probably just wash right off you. But if you do, I think it's pretty bad. And I mean, there's some cautions. If you're a single woman traveler in Egypt, you have to be more careful. I could walk around anywhere. I was like the king of the place. Like,
well, that's good. But you're like 6'10".
Yeah, I'm 6'5", and have a big beard and wander around. I mean, I kind of go back and forth because I think Egyptians are awesome people. Like, I mean, my friends in Egypt, the people that I met on the street were like the friendliest people that you'll ever meet anywhere. Just broadly speaking, like they'll stop and yell across the street and say "Welcome to Egypt" and wave at you, and they're so stoked that you're there and they want to talk to you, and they're earnest. There are people who are definitely like trying to get money off of you, but in general, I think like a lot of the people are pretty stoked that you're around. And I felt really welcomed, and I felt safe almost everywhere that I went. I've definitely been in places in America where I felt in more danger than in Egypt. Of course, it's an enormous city. There are parts of town that probably aren't safe to be in, and so on. But yeah, it's a great spot. I mean, I don't want to discourage people from going to Egypt, but if you're a woman traveling by yourself, there are probably extra precautions to take, and there are special cars on the metro, which the metro is safe, but you should ride those special cars if you're a woman, and if you're a man, you should not get on those cars. It will be a problem. Yeah.
Egypt has arguably the most interesting history of any country in the world, and the only one of the 7 wonders of the world that still exists.
Yeah.
What do the modern Egyptians feel about their history?
Boy, I think they're pretty proud of it, and they should be. It's surprising how many of them don't realize how close the pyramids are, because in Cairo especially. I mean, Cairo's hard to get around in, and the train doesn't go like right there to the pyramids. You have to kind of get out there. And I think a lot of kids in school get to go see the pyramids and stuff, but the pyramids are right on the edge of the city, like right there. If the pollution isn't too bad, you can see them. But if the pollution's bad, you can't see them there. So there's definitely people who really stick to their neighborhoods and never leave their neighborhoods. But I think that's kind of a part of any big city. There's people who just kind of condense their life down into these like 10 blocks or whatever.
Hey folks, sorry to interrupt the interview. I'm on the local search and rescue team here in BC, and we had a call out midway through our conversation with Martin. So TT took over from here. If you're wondering why it seems like I suddenly disappear, I had to go and help this guy out. By the way, he was absolutely fine, got airlifted out to the hospital, and will make a full recovery. But sadly, it meant I missed the rest of the conversation with Martin, which was a real shame because I really enjoyed the first half. We'll get him back on though, and I'll let TT and Martin take over from here.
You and I have, we met up in Egypt. You were living there. I took my son on a second trip back. You met with us before. You met with one of my other buddies that went on a solo trip there. and he's a fairly big traveler now, but Egypt was one of the first ones he went to, and I actually told him not to go. I said, I don't think you're well traveled enough. I don't think you're gonna like it, and he actually hated it. He absolutely hated it. He felt like he was getting people were trying to scam him. He wasn't savvy enough just from not being travel enough to go, and I think since I've been twice and you've lived there, I think it's one of the, because of the historic sites, it's one of the most amazing places in the world. But I think for people that are planning a trip there, you really have to do some research, talk to people that are there, or if you don't want to do any of that stuff, take a tour where they just walk you through everything. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you can really set yourself up to have a bad experience if you kind of just follow where all the tourists are. I mean, you got to go see the Great Pyramids, but that the experience of going and seeing the Great Pyramids is not going to be as great as you hope. I mean,
Yeah.
the pyramids are unbelievable,
Yes.
but it's going to be annoying. Like, people
Yes.
are going to annoy you the entire time. They're going to try
Yes.
to get money from you. But if you go to Saqqara, which is 20 minutes down the road, and arguably, well, in my opinion, a way better site, like 100 times better. You're not going to be annoyed there as much. I mean, there's still people who are going to pester you, but they're a lot less insistent. There are many fewer tourists there. And it's beautiful, and they find new stuff at Saqqara. Like every 2 weeks, they're finding new stuff there. It's a really, really active archaeological site. It feels like it's further from the city. It's just a better experience. So you have to go to the Great Pyramids knowing, I need to see this, and it's going to be completely obnoxious the whole time, and you just have to shrug it off. The other thing that you have to do in Egypt, which is hard, especially for Americans or even any Western traveler, is it's dirty. Like, there's trash everywhere, and you really have to kind of train yourself to look beyond that, because there'll be this huge pile of trash, and right above it some 13th century Islamic landmark that's unbelievable, like gorgeous, but you have to plug your nose and sort of ignore this pile of trash, because people dump their trash on the street and they put it in a pile, and folks come by and pick it up, and they don't always get to it as fast as they should, and there's stray dogs around and cats around, and there's a lot of, like a third of Egypt is in poverty, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I always liken it to this: like, you go see the Great Pyramids and you stand there and say, man, human beings are amazing. Look at this thing that we built. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, the feat of engineering and mathematics that these ancient people had to build these things would be hard now, right? And then you turn around and there's some guy with like 8 tourists on a cart with a horse that's starving, and he's whipping the horse and it's climbing up the hill, and you're like, man, human beings are terrible. Like, you can just see the whole span of humanity there, and everything in between.
Yeah, there's trash at the foot of it. I remember when I went the first time, I really had this idea of like, I'm going to stand at the bottom of the pyramids and I'm going to look up and I'm going to have like an existential moment, and I'm really going to think about my place in the world. And then what happened is you're standing there and you've got a guy next to you just screaming, camel, camel, riding my camel, and you're like, no, and they won't stop, and you're like, how am I can't even think straight. I'd like, and that's why I think some of those other ones are way better, like the Bent Pyramid.
Yeah, better spots. I didn't have any existential moments, I feel like, when I was looking at landmarks in Egypt, but in like thinking about stuff that I saw afterwards, there were just like some really unbelievable stuff. Like when I went to the museum and saw the royal mummies, and Ramses II is laying there, and he's probably the guy who chased Moses across the Red Sea. And it's like that guy, you can see his hair and his fingernails and his face. It's like, that guy's in the Bible. Like, it's like he's there. He's a celebrity in the biggest book in human history. I mean, that's the stuff that in Egypt, that you can see in Egypt, that you just can't like fathom anywhere else. And just the fact that because they mummified people, like, you can see his face and his teeth, and like look at him, like he's not a skeleton. You can really see the guy. It's really amazing. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. I had many moments like that in Egypt, just like sitting at some coffee shop or sitting and having tea after doing something, and like soaking it all in, and like, wow, Like Alexander the Great was here, like stood where I stood. Like we know it. There's documentation. He stood right there. Napoleon stood right here. I mean, you could have that experience everywhere you go in Egypt.
Well, and how old they are, because when was it? How old is the Great Pyramid? 5,000 years old or something around there?
Yes, or 6,500 maybe. It's
So
old. I can't remember. It's old. Yeah.
So the time, people don't realize this, but the time from when they built the pyramids to the time of Jesus is a longer distance than from Jesus to now. That's how old they are. I mean, it's and I think because people watch, Exodus and they watch movies, they think it's about the same time, but it was so unbelievably long ago they built those pyramids. And I will say, to go on the record, one thing that really annoys me about when you talk to people about Egypt is this whole thing about like aliens built all that stuff. And to me, and I'm not someone who cries racism all the time, I think it's incredibly racist. It's kind of like, I think people subconsciously are like, how could this like non-white person build this? Oh, it must have been aliens.
I think
you don't
it's
hear
worse
that
than
about
because,
Romans and Greeks.
Yeah, I think it's worse than that, because I think it's like it just like devalues the capabilities of human beings. Of like, man, we can do this. Like, it also like ignores a lot of the history. It's not like they came up with the theory about what the pyramids are out of nothing. Like, there's a whole transition of this is how pyramids came to be, and kind of the succession of structures that arrived at pyramids. And the Great Pyramid's not the oldest pyramid. I mean, there are many older pyramids than that one around in Egypt, including Saqqara, the Pyramid of Djoser, which is one of the first ones, the Step Pyramid, which is one of the first pyramids. I mean, it's many, I can't, hundreds of years older, than the Great Pyramid. So, but I always think about that, of like, boy, you should have some faith in our abilities. Like, we human beings can do really amazing stuff. We have done and continue to do amazing stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we got to the moon without computers.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's amazing. I mean, it's just that's one of the reasons I really like history, and why I think Egypt is so great, is because it's a pretty great place of self-discovery, and also to understand how interconnected the world is, because you'd be hard-pressed to find a part of human history that didn't touch Egypt in some way, just because Egypt is so old, and it was such an incredible society, because they developed writing, and they built these amazing buildings, and inspired the Greeks and Romans to build giant stone buildings, because they came to Egypt and saw all that stuff and said, hey, that we should do this. I mean, pretty much every ancient people that encountered the Egyptians were like, holy cow, these guys are amazing. Who are these people? And so, like, as you like, if you study history and you go through all parts of history, you'll say, oh, this was associated with Egypt in this way. This was associated with Egypt in this way, because it was such a spellbinding place and an inspiring place, and it still is. I mean, it's definitely going through hard times, like and I don't know what the answer is. If I did, I'd maybe suggest it, but you can go see the earliest of Islamic culture there. You can go and see Roman culture there. You can go and see the earliest of Christian culture there. Jesus was there. He traveled up the Nile. You can see places where Jesus maybe stayed, where they say he like slept, where he descended and got on the boat and sailed up the river.
Well, and I went to
Caesar Augustus was there. Yeah.
With I think it's like Coptic Christian.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
where Joseph and Mary like slept on their
the
ways.
crypt church with
and you can go down and see where they slept.
Yeah, when they were fleeing King Herod. Yeah, that's there. I mean, maybe, who knows? That was definitely there at that time. It was the big Roman fortress, the Babylon fortress. So that could be where they stayed. I mean, I guess I'm always sort of skeptical of that. I have a friend who went to Jerusalem, and they have like 3 churches where Jesus was born or something. I don't know. I'm always like maybe he was definitely there. Like, he was on the Nile, so you can stand there and see that. And I think it's kind of hard pressed, because sometimes that history gets a little garbled.
Yeah.
But there are big mosques there that are important. Like the Hussein Mosque, which as an American you can't go into. The head of Hussein, Muhammad's nephew, is in that mosque. Is interred there, and Hussein was like one of the most important people in Muslim history, and he's there. And there's a lot of that. The citadel in Cairo was Saladin's castle, who the opponent in the Crusades. So you can visit that stuff. It's just you start going through the checklist of like, oh yeah, World War I happened here too. Oh yeah, World War II happened here too. This is where the British turned around Rommel. It's just amazing. Like when you start scratching away the layers of the onion, what you find.
So people are probably wondering, is this an unbelievable culture, one of the most amazing cultures of in history.
Yeah.
Why did it fail?
Boy, I don't know if it did fail. I always think about that. I think it maybe transitioned from one, because it's hard to know. I feel like maybe through like genetic research or something. I think they could probably figure out, because of the mummies, how related those groups of people are. I would assume that they are, but the Egyptians have always been there, right there on the Nile, and there's definitely a cohesive group of Egyptians that are there on the Nile, that live on the Nile. I think the regime changed, that Alexander the Great came through with his awesome army, and the Egyptians had kind of a weak leader at that point in time, and were okay following this new pharaoh that had happened in the past. And Alexander the Great was an inspiring and great leader, and so they became part of that Alexandrian culture. And Ptolemy took over after that and established Alexandria, and it sort of became like a Greek primacy. But those people were still there. That society was still there. And the Egyptian gods and the Greek gods kind of they mesh together okay. I think that they each adopted each other's gods, and then the Romans, they came when the Ptolemies started to kind of fail, and when the Roman Empire was expanding. But I don't think that was like all that brutal of a takeover either. I think it was like, well, it's time to do something different. And then the Romans were there until the Ottomans, like they're there a long time. And the Ottomans were there until Napoleon, or well, not quite till Napoleon. They had till the early 1800s, and then Napoleon came later. So, I think that culture was there always, and it changed because of like different religious movements. Like the Christianity took hold in Egypt pretty early on. There are definitely churches that are in ruins, or some still going in Egypt, that were established in like the 300s or 400s. And then the Islamic expansion came through in the 800s. There's several mosques there that are from the 700s or 800s. And then there were all sorts of caliphates that kind of took over and established their place in Egypt. But they all those cultures like just love the place. You go see the pyramids, you go see that stuff, you could not help but be in awe of it, and they wanted to have it, and they wanted to own it. So I don't know if did it fail. I don't know. They're still there. They're still doing their thing.
That's true.
I sort of always thought about that when we were talking about like the government in Egypt, and how like they tried to set up this kind of democracy or de facto democracy, but the traditional leader of Egypt is not called president. He's called pharaoh. And I always wonder like if that's just part of that society and culture. I think I would be really interested to hear from an Egyptian political thinker about what they thought about that, because I had conversations with a few people who were part of the Arab Spring uprising in 2011, but I don't know. I don't know. I think about that a lot. That's on my that's on my reading list of like that. It doesn't have, the world had changed around it, and Egypt doesn't have like the geography to allow it to be a superpower in the same way as the United States or Russia or China. It just doesn't have a diversity of landscape or a diversity of resources in the same way. So I think that puts it on kind of a back footing in order to be like what we would consider a modern power. But if we were still like functioning in the ancient world, I think Egypt would still be quite strong, because it was just so hard to invade them. Like, it was so hard to go take them over because you had to cross these enormous deserts to get there, and then your army is exhausted, and their army is just sitting there drinking great water and eating awesome food, waiting for you to show up. So, I think more than once people tried to invade Egypt and it failed miserably. The Mongols didn't quite get that far. They were looking across the what's now the Suez Canal when they got word from that the Khan had died and they had to turn around and go home. So, who knows? Maybe that would have been what did it. It toppled a lot of other cultures.
So, I've got two other things I want your thoughts on. One is, because we're pretty much focused on Cairo, maybe we do another podcast another time on different parts of Egypt. But if someone's going to Cairo, let's say for however long, like a few days, a long weekend, a week, what are the must-sees? I mean, obviously Giza. I would say like the Bent Pyramid, that area, and then I would say the Egyptian Museum's a must. The Citadel. Yeah.
And the museum's moved out by the pyramids now. It's in a new place. I don't know if the one downtown is open anymore. Maybe something's still there. That museum was cool. Yes, you should go see the Giza. It's going to be a drag, but you got to go see it. It's a seven wonder of the world. You got to go see that. You should go see the Bent Pyramid in Dashur, and you should go see Saqqara. Those are the great pharaonic, ancient Egyptian sites there. And I would spend more time at Saqqara. Go to Giza. I probably wouldn't even necessarily recommend that you walk out to the end pyramid. I mean, it's fine, but if you want to go in the Great Pyramid and go stand in that middle room, Napoleon was in there. You can be in the place where he stood around. Maybe Caesar was in there too. I can't remember. But go see that. I don't know if I would spend that much time like walking out to the end pyramid. You can go in Menkaure, the little pyramid too. The boat, the museum with the Egyptian boat is pretty cool.
Like the barge museum or something like that.
Yeah. The sun boat or whatever. It's right there at the base of the Great Pyramid. I mean, that site is big. Like, it takes a long time to walk around. I probably wouldn't waste my money on a horse ride or a camel ride.
No.
I wouldn't go do any of that. And go see that. But then you should go down to Saqqara and plan on spending like a long time there. 3 hours, 4 hours at least, and go see, because they have lots of stuff out there. And you could drive around and see like the Serapeum where they buried the bulls, the religious bulls, which the name escaped me just now. They have, pyramids that you can see there. I think the Pyramid of Djoser, you can go in that one now, the Step Pyramid. There's the Pyramid of Tai. There's all these amazing sites with all these beautiful hieroglyphs that are carved. Unbelievable. And then you could go down to the Bent Pyramid in Dashur, which are older pyramids. They were built by Snefru. Snefru was the father of Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid. So Snefru was kind of the guy who built several pyramids, and he's the experimenter where they were trying to. The Bent Pyramid is bent because halfway up they realized that the angle was too steep and it was going to collapse on itself, so they changed the angle, and it's bent. And then the Red Pyramid was built too shallow, so he didn't like that it wasn't so prominent. It was built at like a 45-degree angle. You can go in the Red Pyramid, and you maybe can go in the Bent Pyramid now, I think I heard. And then there's another pyramid out there that's newer, the Black Pyramid, which kind of looks like it's in real ruins. It was built out of brick instead of stone, and it's much newer. I can't remember when that one was built, but there's other sites out there, but you should definitely go see those 3 sites. There's a lot of other stuff around there, pharaonic, to see. The other thing that I really believe that you should go and see, because it's one of my favorite places, is you should go see the Mosque of Ibn Tulun, which is one of the earliest mosques in Egypt. It's beautiful. It's it's from like 895 or something. And you can go in. It's kind of in the center of Cairo, and it's maybe not in a really scenic part of town, but you go walk in the mosque, and it's serene and gorgeous, and you can walk around the mosque and see all the carvings, and you can climb up the minaret and get to the top and look out over Cairo. I think that's amazing. I love it there. And I really love the Citadel too. Like, I like walking up to the Mosque of Muhammad Ali, which is a newer mosque. But there's a lot of stuff up there, and you can get a good view of Cairo. I used to take people, I can't remember if we did this, but I used to take people up to the Citadel, and we would walk through the Citadel, and then we would walk down and see the Mosque of Sultan Hassan. down below, because that's kind of the old gates of Cairo. They're the old city, and then we would walk down to the Mosque of Ibn Tulun. Did we do that?
I honestly I don't remember, but I did do the Citadel with my son when I went recently. When I went with you, it was also overwhelming. It kind of just meshed together. And then my son and I went to all those other pyramids you talked about, and I agree they're way better. You can go down in them, and it's not as crowded. And if you're claustrophobic or you're old and your back hurts, or you have heart problems, I certainly wouldn't go down in it. If you have an emergency down that thing, you are screwed.
Yeah, and if you're claustrophobic, you should not go into any of the pyramids. I mean, you have to crouch, and there's people going up and down. I mean, it gets really tight in there. It is not. Yeah, it's some serious adventuring.
Yeah, it is. And
I mean, there are steps and lights. It's not it's not completely dark, but
I can't imagine for you, because I'm 5'11" and my back hurt the whole next day after I climbed in them. I can't imagine what it's like for you going down in them.
Yeah, I would just go up on all fours and just let my hands get dirty and whatever. I only went in the Great Pyramid once because that was enough. But you should go. But I really, like, a lot of people concentrate on the pharaonic stuff, but I think the Islamic stuff in Cairo is so unbelievable, and it's so beautiful. Like, if you can look past the concrete brutalist buildings that were built later, you could see some gorgeous architecture. And if you're like looking for cool souvenirs that I'm not knick-knack souvenirs, but like there's the tent makers, which is like quilters. They make these beautiful Islamic quilts, and it's an old tradition. They would make the quilts to line the tents of the Bedouins, and that's there at Bab Zuwayla. Bab, it means gate. It's one of the old gates of Cairo. And you can go there to the tent makers and walk all the way up to the Khan el-Khalili, and that's the old street of Cairo, the Muiz Street. And you can get a fez. I got a fez.
Well, I know that's a sore subject with me, because
I know you missed it. Yeah.
I paid a driver to take me to the fez place, because there's a time when fezzes were everywhere in Egypt, and now there's one person who makes them the old way still, and I went to his store. I hired a driver to go down, and it was his day off.
Yeah,
and
bummer.
it's like, and I was so irritated because I was so excited to get fez.
And they measure your head and make it just for you. The tarbouche. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah. I used to go down there. There's a place, the Khan el-Khalili is kind of a tourist market, a bazaar. Pretty much everything they sell there is just souvenir knick-knacky stuff, and who cares. But it's cool to go down and see the vibe. It's an ancient market, but there's a cafe there called Fishawi's, which is, you can go there and get tea and smoke shisha, which is hookah, and sit there. They have these big mirrors. It's open 24/7, and it has been since like the 1700s. And you could sit there and drink tea and smoke shisha and visit and just be in the thick of Cairo. People will wander by and try to sell you stuff, and I just love the energy in that place. There's another pretty great spot right down there too that's kind of behind Al-Azhar Mosque, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's right next to the House of Oud, which is a music school, and they do concerts and stuff there. That's kind of an off the beaten path place that people should go check out. And there's kind of a courtyard there with cafes, and you can get tea and shisha. Everybody drinks tea, and everybody smokes in Cairo everywhere. Like, if you're sensitive to cigarette smoke, that place is not for you. They are smoking everywhere, and the thing that they do, they don't really drink, but they smoke shisha, hookah, and if you're against that, it's not for you. But if you're okay with it, it's great. Like sitting and hanging out and smoking shisha, and those guys come by and maintain it. I mean, it's terrible for you, but
yeah, we did that too. Yeah,
it's fun. I loved it. It was a social thing and fun to hang out and visit with folks, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think I'd probably rather have a cocktail, but it's an experience to have. Now, last question I have, and I'm sure we'll have you on again because you're a wealth of information. But what tips would you give people? Let's say like your top 3 tips for people that are planning a trip to Egypt or planning a trip to Cairo. What would you say?
I would probably try. Don't stay at a hotel out by the pyramids. That's a big one. You can get a taxi. I would probably not accept a ride from somebody who's not a taxi driver. We did that a couple of times, and it was mayhem. The taxis are fine. Whatever they ask you to pay is probably too much if you're a local. But if you feel like haggling, you can, but it's probably not really that expensive. Whatever they ask you to pay is probably not going to be that much money. Uber is great. You can do that. They kind of expect you to haggle. So if you're comfortable with that, you can go and haggle, but a lot of times you're kind of haggling down from like a price that I would normally pay to something that I feel like is like egregiously too low. But it just depends on who you are. I think the hotels downtown are fine. The metro train, you should ride the metro. The metro is great. It goes up and down the Nile. So you could, if you stay on Tahrir Square, for instance, at like or on Zamalek, if you stay at the Nile Hilton, or someplace like that.
Yeah, and that's where I stayed last time with my son, was in Nile Hilton.
Yeah, you can get on the train and you can ride the metro down to ride it down to the Hanging Church. The metro's fine. It's kind of hard to navigate. Nobody stands in lines, so you just kind of have to elbow your way up to stuff. And do all that. You should depend on getting dirty. Like, don't take your nicest clothes. Take clothes that are durable, or clothes that can get dirty. I would dress conservatively, whether you're a man or a woman. I wore shorts on occasion if I was in Mahdi, but pretty much if I went outside of Mahdi where I lived, I'd wear pants and closed-toed shoes. I wouldn't walk around Egypt in flip-flops or sandals. That's gross. I would wear closed-toed shoes that are pretty durable. Sun, you need to cover yourself with the sun. And this shirt I'm wearing this orange shirt that's kind of lightweight. I had in Egypt. It was great. It's long sleeve. It's lightweight. You're probably better off with that than wearing short sleeves. If you go into a mosque, especially if you're a woman, they might have other separate doors for you to come in. If you go into a mosque, you need to take your shoes off. You absolutely cannot wear your shoes in the mosque at all, or anywhere like the Mosque of Muhammad Ali, for instance, has kind of an open courtyard. And you have to take your shoes off and walk around there. And
I remember doing that.
Your socks are going to get dirty and dusty. Yeah. But you can't. People will be angry. You will be assaulted if you wear your shoes. And the other thing is to remember that Egyptians are pretty friendly. And some of them are trying to get money from you, but in general, even the ones who are trying to get money from you, if you joke and have a good spirit with them, it's a lot better than if you get mad and are annoyed with them, because that doesn't really pay off. They're just out there hustling, trying to get some money. So if you approach everybody there being friendly, a lot of times they're really cool, and even if they're trying to get money from you, they'll also be your friend and all that. And what was the other thing I was going to say? The nightlife is the thing in Cairo. You should go and hang out at night and be out amongst the people at night, because the daytime is so brutally hot. Nobody's out there having a good time during the day. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Yeah, I think it's all great advice. I think, wearing a long sleeve linen shirt and pants is respectful, and you definitely don't want to. You'll see people you'll see tourists that are in booty shorts and stuff walking around, or they're at the sides.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
It's just disrespectful, and I think you're always better off being a little bit better dressed. But
yeah, there's no hiding. I could never hide that I was an American. I'm 6'5" and white and have a big beard and blue eyes, and everybody knew I was an American immediately. And I just was always really forgiving with people, and kind of looked through the dirt, looked through the grime, expected the best out of people, and generally got the best out of people. You got to pay attention to your safety there, just because you have to be careful, where you're walking and what you're touching, and don't touch anything electrical that you don't know about. Because people get electrocuted. There's some safety things that you don't consider in the United States, and you have to be watching your feet, and wear good walking shoes, because the roads suck and everything's stone. There's no wood. It's just, you have to be it's not for an easy travel with all that, but it's great. I recommend people go to Egypt, because you will understand a lot more about yourself and the world after you go there. And in terms of places in the Middle East, it's probably the best. I mean, in terms of what you can see and what you can do there. I mean, I went to Lebanon, which is great too, but way, way smaller. Egypt's amazing. If you're a traveler, you should put it on your list. If you haven't been there, you should go. And if you've been to a few European countries and you're ready for something, another step, you can go to Egypt. You'll be okay if you're.
I agree. I think it's a must see for everybody that travels in their life. I just don't think it's for junior travelers or people who aren't really used to traveling. But I do agree. I think it's an absolute must see. There's stuff you'll never see, and it's not just going to Dubai and going to big malls. I mean, there's so much history there. So, but I think we'll have you on again. Maybe talk about something else.
Sure.
Your knowledge is so interesting, and your thoughts are so interesting. So, and then Charlie's off saving a life. So
yeah.
Next time. Okay. Yeah, next time hopefully nobody has an accident when we're talking, and because I'm sure he has some other questions for you too. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.